That year's corporate retreat was presented as the event that would change how we all viewed our work. The company had invested heavily: a secluded resort, renowned speakers, leadership workshops, and a schedule that promised development, reconnection, and new opportunities. I arrived with a light heart, believing it would be a chance to breathe outside the routine, strengthen ties with the team, and perhaps show a little more of my potential to the board. After all, I had been delivering consistent results, taking on responsibilities that went beyond my job title, and dedicating myself like few others did. The atmosphere among everyone was one of anticipation. Conversations at breakfast revolved around the day's activities, the challenges, and the prizes that would be awarded at the end. Prizes that, according to rumors, would be generous. There was a feeling of unity, almost as if we were all about to begin a new professional chapter. My assistant, always friendly and full of energy, walked beside me excitedly, talking about how this retreat would be transformative for both of us, and I believed it too. But what I didn't know was that, behind that atmosphere of motivation and brilliance, there were decisions already made, silent observations, and choices that would unexpectedly change the course of my career. The retreat seemed like just another motivational event, one of those designed to generate posts on the company's social media, but it would, in fact, be the setting for one of the biggest turning points I've ever experienced. I just never imagined that the awards ceremony would reveal secrets that would change my professional future forever. In the office, my assistant and I always seemed like a well-tuned duo. At least that's how everyone saw us. She was competent, organized, and knew how to communicate with an ease that charmed the team. She had a presence that filled the room, friendly, quick with responses, always willing to help. Naturally, this won over management. It was common to hear comments like, "She's brilliant, she solves everything," or "She has a huge future here." And I agreed, in part. What almost no one knew was that behind that radiant image, much of the work she received credit for came from the silent overtime I spent adjusting reports, redesigning proposals, and saving presentations in the early hours of the morning. I did it because I believed in the team, and I believed that recognition would come in due time. But little by little, I began to notice that the flow of praise always went in the same direction, and it never came to me. If a client responded positively to a project, the board would say, "Congratulations, she captured the essence." If we met internal goals, there would be laughter and congratulations directed at her as if she were the main person responsible. And this began to create a small fissure within me, something I tried to ignore, but which grew every time I saw the director calling her for side conversations, while my name was barely mentioned in meetings. Despite this, our relationship was good. She treated me with respect and even thanked me for guiding her, although I realized that, given her leadership role, she had no intention of sharing the credit. It was as if, unconsciously, we were on opposite sides without admitting it, partners on paper, competitors in practice. And then a question began to hammer in my mind, growing stronger and stronger. But why did the director always praise her for things that I was the one who did? The retreat began with that typical energy of well-planned corporate events: hearty coffee, lively music, smiling instructors, and a schedule full of activities that promised to develop leadership, teamwork, and emotional intelligence. Early in the morning, we participated in a training session on quick decision-making, where we had to solve problems under pressure. Then came challenges in pairs, communication exercises, and even an outdoor circuit to test collaboration. Everything seemed perfect on the surface, but as the day went on, I began to notice small details, almost imperceptible to anyone not paying attention. In group formations, the director always made a point of placing my assistant in prominent positions. In the instructor's explanations, her name was the one that came up as an example. In one of the feedback exercises, the leadership praised her attitude even before analyzing the performance of the rest of the team. I tried not to take it personally. I told myself that maybe it was a coincidence, maybe it was just the team's spontaneous way of showing affection. But with each new activity, with each new conversation, the same feeling returned. She was being carefully guided into the spotlight. Meanwhile, I remained a supporting player, someone everyone knew worked well, but whom no one seemed willing to highlight. During one of the motivational talks, the instructor asked us to name inspiring people on the team. I heard a colleague pointing to her. "I think she's been showing a special kind of brilliance," the director confirmed with a satisfied smile. And there, sitting at the back of the room, I felt a pressure in my chest. It wasn't envy. It was the feeling of invisibility, that I carried part of the weight of the department, but my efforts dissolved into thin air before reaching those who made the decisions. These small tensions, added together, began to create a silent frustration within me. I participated, I made an effort, I tried to maintain professionalism, but behind the smiles, a question lingered. Why did it seem like that retreat had been designed to exalt someone specific? And for the first time, I felt that the injustice I had been trying to ignore at the office had traveled with me there. At the end of the second day, when everyone was exhausted yet euphoric from the activities, the main hall was prepared for the most anticipated moment of the retreat, the awards ceremony. The ambient light was dimmed, creating a dramatic contrast with the spotlights illuminating the stage. Soft music played in the background, and everyone settled into their seats with a mixture of curiosity and excitement. It was as if we were about to witness a major announcement, and deep down everyone knew that this moment could define the course of some careers. The directors entered the stage with calculated steps, rehearsed smiles, and a glint in their eyes. That betrayed something big was about to be revealed. The operations director took the microphone and in a firm voice announced, "The time has come to recognize the best organizational performance of the quarter." The room filled with murmurs. It was the most important prize, the one everyone wanted, not for the object itself, but for the prestige, the public recognition, the validation. And then, when the director opened the golden envelope, I felt my heart race. He smiled and said, "Congratulations to the team that demonstrated excellence, organization, and commitment. You two come to the stage." Me and my assistant. We stood up together. People clapped, some whistled, others took pictures. We walked to the stage side by side, as if we were an inseparable duo. However, deep down in my chest, an unease persisted, perhaps a fear of confirming what I already suspected. As soon as we reached the center of the stage, the director turned to her first. He opened an elegant box, made of dark wood with an impeccable finish. Inside, a state-of-the-art laptop, the kind any professional would love to receive. The audience cheered. She smiled, moved, held the prize, and thanked everyone, radiant. And then, silence. I stood still, literally still. The director didn't open another box. He didn't offer another package. He didn't look for anything behind the pulpit. He just glanced at me for a brief second, as if he had forgotten I was there, waiting, vulnerable, exposed in front of everyone. She had the laptop in her hands, and I had nothing. I continued smiling politely, but inside a question screamed, what was my prize? As the applause for the laptop presentation began to fade, I was still there, center stage, waiting for someone to finally say my name. I expected a gesture, an envelope, a box, anything to show that my presence there had meaning. But the only thing I received was silence, a heavy, uncomfortable silence that seemed to echo throughout the hall. The crew's expressions began to shift. Some lowered their eyes, perhaps trying to avoid embarrassment. Others whispered discreetly amongst themselves. There were also those who looked directly at me with that expression of someone unsure whether to feel pity, surprise, or indignation. And I, standing there, felt my face grow hot. It was as if all the stage lights were pointed exclusively at my discomfort. The leadership, sensing the awkward atmosphere, exchanged quick glances, the kind that say a lot without saying anything. Glances that revealed this hadn't been carefully planned, or worse, that it had been planned, but without considering the consequences. The director cleared his throat, smiled tensely, and made a gesture with his hands, as if wanting to quickly end the situation. No explanation, no acknowledgement, no object handed over, nothing. I stepped off the stage, trying to maintain my composure, even though inside I was consumed by a mixture of humiliation and confusion. My assistant walked beside me, still excited about the laptop, not fully realizing the impact of the scene. Some people came to congratulate her, while others approached me only to say vague things like, "You deserve it too, you know," or "It must have been some kind of mistake." Before I could fully return to my seat, one of the directors approached and placed his hand on my shoulder. The touch was quick, almost nervous. "Could you come with me for a moment?" he said, without explaining anything. That sentence sounded strange. Nothing there seemed spontaneous. The haste in his eyes betrayed that something bigger was happening behind that flawed ceremony. He led me out of the hall, through the resort's silent corridors, to a secluded room, as if he wanted to avoid any witnesses. My heart was racing, now no longer from embarrassment, but from a premonition I couldn't ignore. And it was there, with that unexpected invitation, that everything began to change. The director walked ahead of me, through the resort's silent corridors without saying a word. Each step echoed as if announcing something big, something I wasn't sure I really wanted to find out. The door to the room he entered was set apart, almost hidden, as if reserved exclusively for conversations that shouldn't be overheard. When he gestured for me to enter, I sensed that this wasn't just an ordinary conversation, it was a decision being made. As soon as the door closed, the atmosphere changed completely. The informal tone of the retreat vanished. The director, usually relaxed, was serious, with his hands clasped and his gaze fixed on me. He took a deep breath before speaking, as if choosing each word with surgical precision. "I know the situation on stage was uncomfortable for you," he began, "but I need you to understand what's really going on." He walked to the table, opened a drawer, and took out a simple mat-covered folder. Nothing special, no fancy boxes or flashy gifts, just a folder. He placed it carefully in front of me, as if it was something extremely valuable. Abra. When I opened it, I found the complete portfolio of the company's main clients, large, strategic accounts, the ones that determined the year's revenue. There were reports, direct contacts, confidential plans, and future proposals. I was speechless. "While the laptop is a nice gift," he continued, "true appreciation lies not in the object's shine, but in the trust we place in someone." He explained that for months, the board had been observing my attitude, my quiet commitment, my ability to solve problems without fanfare. They realized that, although I wasn't the center of attention, I was the one sustaining a large part of the department's performance. The laptop, according to him, was a motivational prize, something to inspire teams and generate internal visibility. But the portfolio, that was the real gift, the real promotion, the real gamble. "We didn't give you a visual prize," he said. "We gave you a responsibility. We gave you a future." I held the folder, still trying to grasp the magnitude of it all. The feeling of humiliation on stage began to transform into something completely different, something between surprise, relief, and a profound sense that, finally, someone had recognized my worth. And there, in that isolated room, I realized that what seemed like a public defeat was, in fact, the greatest gesture of confidence I had ever received. While I was still holding the portfolio folder, trying to process what it all meant, the director sat down in front of me and adopted an even more serious tone, the kind of tone that only appears when important decisions have already been made, long before the conversation begins. He clasped his hands, leaned slightly forward, and said something that completely changed my perception of everything that had happened up to that point. "I want you to understand that nothing we're doing right now is impulsive. We've been watching you for months." I frowned, still confused. He then began to list, with almost surgical calm, all the times my quiet work had caught the attention of management. The presentations I tweaked at the last minute, the reports I refined without anyone asking, the way I conducted delicate conversations with clients, the ability to keep the team together even under pressure. Things I thought went unnoticed didn't. "You have something that doesn't always come up in meetings: consistency, ethics, maturity, and, above all, strategic vision." He went on to explain that although my assistant was brilliant, communicative, and full of charisma, valuable and much appreciated qualities, she still lacked something essential to take on greater responsibilities. She had charisma, but I had direction. She attracted attention, but I delivered results. "She's great at what she does," he said, without meaning to belittle her. "But you think 3 steps ahead, and that's what we need right now." That phrase hit me hard. I spent months thinking I was being ignored, underestimated, left out. I thought that shiny laptop represented everything I hadn't received, and now, facing that heavy briefcase, I realized I was profoundly mistaken about my position in the company. The director then concluded, "You thought you were losing, but in reality you were being set up." Suddenly, the emptiness I felt on stage began to give way to a completely new feeling, a silent, profound, unadorned recognition, but one far more valuable than any award presented amidst applause. There, in that isolated room, I discovered that I wasn't just part of the team. I was the one they wanted to lead. Even with the client portfolio in my hands and the revelation still echoing in my mind, a part of me couldn't simply accept it all easily. The news was good, excellent in fact, but my heart was still scarred by the experience on stage. I couldn't ignore the feeling of having been exposed, ignored, and put in an uncomfortable position in front of the entire team. And while the director spoke about the future, leadership, and trust, another part of me struggled with thoughts I couldn't silence. Why admit this the hard way? Why allow myself to feel smaller, invisible, inadequate, before revealing something so important? The pain of the comparison still throbbed. Seeing my assistant receiving applause, praise, celebrations, while I tried to hide my embarrassment, had left a deep mark. It wasn't about envy. It was about justice, about simply wanting my effort to be noticed, about wishing that at least once recognition would come without me having to go through some kind of emotional ordeal. And then came the doubts, the ones that no one admits to, but that everyone knows intimately. Did I really deserve this? What if it was all just an attempt to compensate for the embarrassment? What if I wasn't up to that responsibility? The fear of injustice also tried to make its way in, not the injustice against me, but the one I feared committing against my own assistant. Would taking on this role be seen as arrogance? Would I be betraying someone who had always walked beside me? The line between maturity and guilt seemed very thin at that moment. As these thoughts raced through my mind, a deeper reflection began to emerge, almost like a silent response to everything I was feeling, a memory, a phrase, an understanding that we often ignore until life places us exactly where we need to be. How many times have you felt unrecognized, but God was preparing something bigger behind the scenes? The truth is, all this time, I let myself be swayed by appearances, by the shine of the laptop, by the compliments I received, by the bright lights on the stage, by the comparisons that hurt deep in my soul. But God, life, destiny, whatever name you prefer to give it, works differently. He doesn't build recognition with applause. He builds it with purpose, with doors that open in silence, with responsibilities that arrive when no one else is looking. And at that moment I realized that true promotion didn't need to be public to be real. She just needed to be mine. When I returned from the retreat with that folder in hand, I wasn't yet fully aware of the magnitude of the responsibility and the opportunities it held, but it was only after delving into its contents that I realized those clients weren't just important accounts. They were the accounts, the projects that defined the annual revenue, the most sensitive contracts, the most strategic relationships. It was as if they had placed the company's backbone in my hands. In the following months, my routine changed completely. I started participating in meetings I didn't even know existed before. I was invited to meetings with the president, decision-making sessions, and long-term planning sessions. I had access to strategic information that had previously passed me by as if it didn't even belong to me. And for the first time, my voice was heard. Not out of politeness, but because it truly mattered. Clients, initially wary of the change, quickly came to trust me. The professionalism I'd always possessed, but which had previously been hidden behind the brilliance of others, finally found space to shine through. Each renewed contract, each expanded project, and each compliment from outside further strengthened my position within the company. It was a feeling of consistent, solid growth, built on real work and not on appearances. And then came the recognition. Not the noisy, theatrical, spotlight-filled recognition, but the recognition that truly matters. Daily respect, the trust of leadership, the autonomy to make decisions, formal invitations to lead new projects, coordinate teams, and participate in the company's expansion. I realized I was ceasing to be just another name on the organizational chart and becoming a key piece of the company's future. Meanwhile, my assistant remained in the same place. She lost nothing. Her laptop, her charisma, her good relationship with everyone remained, but she also didn't advance, and little by little it became clear that she was comfortable there. Perhaps the promotion wasn't what she wanted. Perhaps the glitz of praise was more important to her than the depth of the responsibilities. Or perhaps she simply wasn't ready for the next steps yet. There was no rivalry, no resentment. The difference between us was simple. While I made a silent and steady leap, she remained, exactly where she was. And looking back, I realized that that simple folder, delivered to a secluded room, had changed everything. It wasn't just a collection of documents. It was the key that opened the door I had been waiting for years. The door that finally allowed me to walk into the place I always knew I could occupy. When I look back at everything that happened at that retreat, I realized that the greatest lesson wasn't on stage, in the applause, or in the luxurious gift handed out in front of everyone. The true lesson was in what no one saw, in the silent decision that didn't fit into elegant boxes or make it into the event's stories. It was hidden in a simple folder, delivered away from the spotlight, but laden with responsibility, trust, and a future. Life often takes such paths, winding, discreet, unexpected. Sometimes what seems like humiliation is just the setting for a turning point. Sometimes what seems like injustice is simply God rearranging the pieces where no one is looking. And above all, sometimes what seems like defeat is just the first step towards a silent promotion. The truth is, recognition doesn't always come with a bang. It doesn't always come in the form of visible awards, expensive gifts, or public praise. Often it arrives behind the scenes, through an opportunity only you can see, a responsibility only you can carry, a door that opens just for you, even when no one else notices. And when you understand this, everything changes. The focus shifts from the object's shine to the shine of confidence. Security ceases to be based on what you receive and begins to be based on what you represent. Victory is no longer measured by applause, but by the doors that open. In the end, I learned that the value is not in the present, but in the intention it carries, in the trust that he symbolizes, in the future that he announces. The laptop was beautiful, but the portfolio built my future. And perhaps on your path, something similar is happening right now. Maybe you're watching someone receive applause while you receive silence. Maybe you think you've lost. But in silence, something greater may be being prepared for you, in the right way, at the right time, in the right hands. Remember, the shine of the gift may only be an illusion, the one about trust. That's what truly changes lives. Have you ever been in a situation where it seemed like you were losing, but in the end you were winning? Tell us in the comments and share this video with someone who needs to understand this today.